This next story ties in exactly what you were just saying about these leftists saying, you've got the resources, just give them to me, not realizing all the work that goes into it. So the big news we have now that came out today is that Mitch McConnell, first of all, he objected to the $2,000 stimulus bill, and everybody's complaining, oh, Mitch McConnell's blocking our stimulus or whatever. Mitch McConnell introduces $2,000 aid checks bill tied to social media immunity and election fraud. This is really interesting stuff. Basically, what Mitch McConnell is saying is, I'm not going to give you your blanket $2,000. You're going to vote for my $2,000. And here's what it says. As part of McConnell's bill, Section 230, the social media immunity law would be repealed and a commission on election fraud would be created. The stimulus checks would be increased to $2,000 from the current $600. Quote, it will not pass the House and cannot become law, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said in a statement referring to the Democratic majority House of Representatives. McConnell's office was not immediately available for comment, blah, blah, blah. Do you think they're going to vote for this? Because this is interesting stuff. I've been saying for a while, Trump wants to repeal 230. I think it's really, really bad. But some conservatives made some really good points. And I'll tell you why I think it's bad. Repealing 230 means that it's the end of social media as we know it. I think if I was going to be optimistic, this show would probably be fine because YouTube is trying to be like Netflix and they like this show. They seem to like me and the people I associate with or whatever because, it's safe, I suppose. Well, YouTube doesn't seem to have a problem with you being on the show, right? So here's the point. If I was going to pitch something to Netflix, I've actually had a lot of discussions. It's likely they'd probably pick something up. Yep. So YouTube's going to be like, this is a good show. We can keep this. We're safe. But they're going to get rid of all the smaller creators. Your channel, Eric, might be at risk because they're going to be like, we don't know who this guy is. We don't care. And we don't want to get sued for libel and defamation. Yeah. So they're going to get rid of anyone who's not approved. Yeah. So I think ultimately it's a bad idea. But what's interesting is a lot of conservatives brought up a really good point. They said, Tim, we've already been purged. It's only good for us. If they get rid of it, if we're out, then so I guess the way you put it is, if right now the media companies are favoring progressive ideals and restricting conservatives, then the best thing for conservatives is to nuke the whole system because right now they're losing because of it.
Well, I think Section 230 is going to be abused, especially under a Biden administration that has many high-level tech executives within it. And of course, they're going to be patting and patting each other on the back and helping each other out. And of course, the little guys are going to get screwed over and everyone else is going to be allowed to do what they usually do. Or it's just not going to be enforced like many of the laws that are just there on the books, but they're not really used at all. So I think that's a probability that we have to understand here as well.
I don't know if they'd actually move to repeal it, but I know the Democrats are probably going, oh, no. Oh, I can't believe they're going to repeal this. Whatever will we do? Because like I said, YouTube will allow my show to be around. And you know what else is going to happen? Take a look at Netflix. Take a look at all of these big production, companies. What kind of movies are they making? They're making woke and far left and weird
that's all I talk about
neo-lib or whatever. Yeah, they're making all of this stuff. So if you get rid of the independent creators, that's what's left.
Yeah.
We're
their competition, though. Like I've long talked about that. Like we are. This is why channels like mine blew up over the course of the last couple of years because of that. It's like a lot of folks are tired of that. They're like, all right, we're being lectured all the time in the movies that we watch, the games that we play, the comic books that we read, and we don't want any of that. But the issue though is when we talk about these Uber tech companies that take these government. I would encourage you guys to look at that. I know we talk about corporate welfare all the time, but just go look at how much these guys get in terms of not even with the taxation, but just with how they work with the government directly, be it in government contracts.
Like these big tech companies.
Yeah,
the guarantees of protections.
Yeah, exactly. And why it is that they often favor those more regulatory bodies because they're the ones that benefited. We talked about that last show with I talked about the bail monopoly. Like that was what happened. They work with the state, and then it sounds good. It's like, hey, we're protecting you, net neutrality. We're protecting you, and then it's like, no, that actually does not benefit you. They just worded it in a way that was supposed to benefit you.
This is how the game works. Mitch McConnell is coming at repealing 230 and an election fraud investigation from the left argument. This is really interesting. Give the people their $2,000 and repeal 230. That's how they do it.
And all the other
they give you money. Now I think part of me, I look at the repeal of 230 and imagine if we got rid of social media. We went back to the era of 4 or 5 news channels. Then you'd have the restoration of many news organizations and a balance of competition between perspectives and a more unified worldview for people in this country. At least that's the idealistic utopian vision of what might happen. In reality, what will happen is the progressive leftists who have already gone insane from their own platforms, like Jack Dorsey went nuts. Jack Dorsey's own creation, Twitter, made him crazy. And I mean it. You can look at the things he believes and says, and it's a product of the far left in swimming in a pool of their own filth. Yeah. And then they prop each other up. The likes, create more shares, more retweets, and then it spirals out of control. And then he starts believing, the refuse coming out of his own platform. That will be what's left. There won't be this perfect system of restoring balance and bringing back regular and honest, independent voices. Nope, it's too late. There's a split. I'll tell you this, man. If they get rid of 230. And it really does result in more censorship and more banning, it would just accelerate everything.
I think, though, when we talk about that and also the other pork, though, that we somehow stopped talking about.
Pakistani gender studies.
Yes, all of that stuff. That's another way in how they pass stuff like that. You're seeing an example of that. It's like, how can we get them to focus on that? Like, okay, they wanted a little more cash, bam, a little more cash. And then it's like, all right, well, we'll give them 2,000. But all of that garbage is still in there, right? It's still there, and we're not. I don't want to say we're not talking about it, but it's like, oh, hey, we're getting a raise on this free money that we just printed out of thin air. But we're not talking about. But that's how it gets passed. It's like if I can get you to focus on that, they do that with titles of bills all the time, where it's like, hey, this is supposed to be this, and then someone that actually reads the damn bill is like, wait a minute, that's not what that is, Rand or something like that's not what that is. I actually read this bill. It doesn't say do exactly this, and that, and then they're like, well, he's a racist because he didn't vote for this, the you like black people bill or something like that, and there's all types of garbage in it. Yeah.
If they took the entire omnibus and just broke it up and spread it around,
atomized it.
No, I mean, just broke it up and said, we're going to give everyone an equal share. Every working American.
Oh, you're talking about like in the price point that it's at right now.
2.7 trillion or whatever divided by 225 million working Americans, everybody gets like 12 grand. 12 grand.
Another thing we need to realize, we need to stop saying that the government is giving us something. They're not. They're borrowing it from us, which we're going to have to pay back in taxes or with inflation for us or our children or our children's children are going to have to pay for this in one way or another.
They're stealing from future generations, and this is why
they're not giving us nothing.
It's they'll devalue what you have right now, and they're selling off assets of unborn people. That's exactly what they're doing. And the fact that people are just so okay with that, to me, is what's so freaky about it. You break it down to them like, dude, that money is not there. This whole myth that you think, well, I'm just getting my taxpayer money back. Your money's gone. They don't have it. They don't have it. They're in the red right now and still spending it. They don't have your money.
This is why we got off the gold standard. Because they borrowed your money, spent it, and when you asked for it back, they said, here's a piece of paper. It's good for the money, I swear. And people are like, all right, I guess. I don't think you can go back on the gold standard at this point. A lot of people wanted to. Didn't Trump try appointing that lady who wanted to get on the gold standard?
I wish that would have happened.
That would have been hilarious, man. Yeah. I just kind of want, I don't know if I think the system might be too far gone, but it would be nice to be back on a track where you can understand what's happening. And we're at this point now where it's this massive Ponzi scheme where they just deficit spend into oblivion, which results in the interest being higher than the ability to even pay anything back. So that means there's rapid inflation. It's a big Ponzi scheme. And the reason it won't collapse is because they have guns.
If Donald Trump was real, he would have appointed Ron Paul to the head of the Federal Reserve. I talked to Ron. I'm like, Ron, would you do? He's like, yeah, I'll do this. I'll do this in a heartbeat. Of course he'd do it. That would be. I think that's what we need.
If they wanted to, if they really wanted to take an axe to the system, that would have been the guy that they went with in 2012 to 2008 as well. But no,
he told me he would do it.
Yeah, of course, I know he will. But seriously, guys, it's like trying to get people to it's like literally pulling teeth out of people's mouths, man, trying to get them to understand that money's not there. It's like they don't get it. I get in these fights with can I say boomer conservative? Is that like offensive or something like that? That's an age slur. Okay, all right. So
you can say I'm kidding.
All right, yeah, I'm kidding.
Probably is. I don't know.
I'm kidding. Yeah, but no, and I talk about Social Security, and they seriously think, well, if we're gonna take away Social Security, then I want my money back, and I'm like, bro, your money's not there. The money that you were being taxed, you've been stolen from, which was a decent portion of your check, is gone. They don't even pretend that it is yours. What's happening right now is you're living off of the current generation that's going to end up in the same position. This is why it's a literal Ponzi scheme in that regards. But people don't understand that, and I guess it's because maybe the state has babied them and given them whatever they wanted.
Check us out. So Luke and I were talking about getting this big farm property and what we could do if we had like our own cryptocurrency. And it's like we want people to come and contribute and help us build stuff. And I'm like, how do you actually create value in a currency? How do you actually convince people it's worth something if you can just print it out of thin air? Why would anyone be like, oh, I want some of that? Why? You're just going to keep printing it. No one's going to want any from me.
Well, for the background, we were talking about creating two kind of civilizations.
No, that was your
one with
joke.
A lot of government, one with no government, and we're going to think of ways how to make currencies. We were talking about cryptocurrencies and using some kind of way to create value. One idea I had was to make 1 working hour a value token that people could use and trade within the community. That's what some local communities in Breckenridge have started to
do.
But
listen. But the problem is, so first, the context is like doing some kind of show where we're like, who would succeed? Regulation versus no regulation. And the problem with that idea of the hour is if someone can just print the money arbitrarily, then why would I do work for your currency if you're not working and just printing it out and getting whatever you want from me?
That's what's happening right now.
I know.
That's literally what's happening
You just described American fiscal
Yes,
policy.
I know.
Good job, Tim.
Right, but
that's why I complain to people when they're like, just print more. When Rand Paul comes out and he's like, why not 20,000? Why not UBI? And I'm like, yes. People don't get it.
No.
You can't just do that.
No, that's true.
But that's what's happening.
But that's why, and it's funny you guys are having that conversation, though. That's exactly why it's important that the market be free enough for folks that are even smarter than everybody that's at the table right now to be able to figure that out and answer that sort of question. This is why people acting freely is so important, because we don't got all the answers. It's actually these very, very arrogant, it's not just progressives, but it's especially progressives that are very arrogant enough to think that they have all the answers. And because they can, it's one of the biggest criticisms of what maybe Luke and I more so believe in, is that, well, they figure, well, I can't possibly like conceive an idea or see that world actually coming to fruition. And I'm like, how arrogant of you to think you're the smartest person to ever live, that just because you can't see that being done, it just can't be done at all.
It's kind of funny. Sorry, Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, what we could do in a community is we each print our own crypto. And then, so if you wanted me to do something for you, it would be 5 tokens. You would give me 5 tokens, or I would give you 5 tokens for your product. But if I paid you an Eric coin, I only had to give you 4 tokens. So the value then would create a value system for all these different currencies that we'd start intertrading. Like I would give you 5 tokens for 4 if you're going to give me Eric tokens, so that we still come out even, except you get an extra token out of it. So, and then you're gonna still get tokens for your labor and get paid. And then they could pay you 5 tokens of else. I think that would be how you would do. But
see, like this and in fact, I love we having this conversation, because these are the conversation that innovators have, right? And these are, and this is why it's so important for the market to be free enough so we can have that conversation. The state says, well, I have the smartest people on my team, therefore what I say has to go. Never mind if it hasn't worked. Never mind it's the possibly the most dumbest idea. It doesn't matter. I have the monopoly on law.
Well, this is the important thing. When we're moving towards an ideology, we're moving away towards a merit-based society. Yeah. And whenever we see governments, whether Germany in World War II or the USSR before World War I, whenever they push ideology more than they do merit, there's always a lot of destruction, because there's always a controlling of individuals, not based on their intelligence, not based on their skills, but based on their obedience to the state. And it's interesting that they call themselves, individuals call themselves progressives, when in human history you look at innovation, progression, it's made when there's very little government.
Absolutely.
And then these individuals who want more government are calling themselves progressives. Like that to me is just mind-boggling. It just shows you that we're kind of living in a 1984 double-speak world where words have double meanings now.
The left, I think it was Cenk Uygur who said this, the progressives always win, that the left always wins. And a bunch of people corrected him, saying, no, liberty always wins. A lot of these issues people talk about, going back to like the fight for freedom of speech in the Vietnam era, was about liberty, individual rights, civil rights, gay marriage. All this stuff has always been about individual liberties and the rights of the individual to do things. It's not been about your authority as governor of New York to shut down the economy, destroy people's lives, and put up checkpoints around your city to make sure nobody comes in. And that almost sounds like you're just separating yourself from the rest of this country. We talked about divorce before.
Yeah.
A lot of these places are already doing it. But here's I want to move on to this subject of what happens when people finally have had enough. Because we did mention this a little bit earlier in the show. What happens when people have nothing left to lose? What happens when we start seeing more and more videos of people who are desperate? We see these stories about the woman beating the cop with the baton because she didn't want to wear a mask. People are angry, and they don't care if you guys ever hear that story about the dude who walks into a bank and he has a note. The note is a robbery. He's demanding $1. He threatens them and says, "Give me $1 or else." Then he goes and sits down and he waits for the cops to come and arrest him. You know why? Because he had cancer and he was going to die. And he said, "It's the only way I can get treatment." That's why he did it. And the left likes to bring it up, saying that's how messed up our healthcare system is. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good example of how messed up our healthcare system is. But I do think it's interesting that our prisoners get better healthcare than, say, like this old guy. So there's an interesting point. But this dude was desperate. So desperate, he did a staged kind of robbery to go to prison. What happens when people have nothing left to lose and they don't care about prison?
Yeah, that's when the violence happens, right? When people are down and out. And I think a lot of people have taken for granted that stability. I know a lot of folks, even especially progressives, talk about change and hope and stuff like that. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't want that, right? A lot of people are comfortable being able to see exactly where they're at and where they're going to be able to go. It's when you get that sort of unfamiliarity where people are like, I don't know when the next check's going to come. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay
and they're going to take
next bill. And then that's when they start to erupt.
Well, here's the news. Ex-Pence aide turned Trump critic, very concerned about January 6th violence. So this Hotel Harrington, announces they're shutting down for 3 days when this D.C. event is supposed to happen. And apparently it's because the Washington Post claimed the Proud Boys were using it as a headquarters. The Proud Boys apparently came out and said, that's not true. We haven't used that place for months. And they're saying now, on January 6th, Proud Boys are going to be showing up in plain clothes, not wearing their iconic shirts, and some of them are going to be dressed like Antifa. So there's a very serious concern that there's actual planning going into what's going to happen. I think one of the biggest mistakes, I was thinking about this, one of the biggest mistakes Proud Boys could make is going and fighting with Antifa. Right now, I don't think that matters. I don't think Trump supporters' fights are with Antifa. It's with the establishment government and the Democrats. Antifa's biggest mistake would be going and fighting with Trump supporters. It's a really interesting thing. When I see, there was a funny post by Shoe on Head. You know Shoe?
Yeah.
She posted people, I think it was in, I can't remember which state it was. Do you know where this was, where they were setting up the guillotine in front of the politician's house or whatever?
I think that was in Mexico, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in Mexico, I think. And she said, Cons, this could be us marching to Congress together or whatever. And I said, when Trump's out of the White House, the enemy of my enemy is my friend is going to start looking real good to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. My thing is, though, and why I know a lot of folks rag on me because I say I will not ally with these types because I know next is my back against the wall.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And they're going to put me up against it because ultimately it's about – that's why I don't want to have them using me as my useful idiots. But we got to talk about that, though, because it's a legitimate concern. But I also think it's a lot of leftists over this course of this last year have been trying to, for the sake of legitimizing their own bad behavior, trying to say that the other side would do what it is that they would do. Now, keep in mind what all they've been doing for the past, I don't know, months, right? Definitely this year. Of course, maybe we can talk about what's happened before that, but let's just focus on what happened post George Floyd, where you're talking about hundreds of spots. And in some cases where you go in like the Portlands and the Seattles of the world, you're talking about months at a time, right? That they were just rioting, acting up. So the reason why they do that is so they can say, hey, look at them and what they do, right? Look at them. When to basically to try to absolve them of the bad behavior. I think it's more likely, let's say, I don't want to say likely, but I think it's more likely that they would have, that you probably see a first big powwow with guys that are quote unquote on the right, but more so with the police because they're more when they protest. This is why you don't see when generally they go do their thing. You don't really go see Wendy's get burnt down or something like that. Generally, when the quote unquote right links up, that generally doesn't really happen. They're more precise.
But
with what it is that they do. So I get the desperation, but that desperation may have them more so turning on and maybe I'm just being an ideologue right now, but that desperation may have them actually looking to the people who, the police more than
right. I don't think Trump supporters, they're planning on going to D.C., setting up tents, occupying and protesting, shutting things down. I think it's going to get pretty big. I mean, you got this guy going on MSNBC saying, it's going to get violent and I'm really worried about it. This hotel shutting down. Man, that's a crazy signal. But what do you think's going to happen? You think Antifa are going to be the ones blocking the Trump supporters from having their protest? It's going to be the police.
Yeah, exactly.
And you think Trump supporters are going to be like, okay, officer, we're not going to protest and defend the president. Not anymore.
They've done that for a while, and they know that that's not work. That's not been an effective thing.
When Trump was tweeting Antifa bad and the cops are fighting Antifa, they had the Trump supporters, the Proud Boys, everybody at their back saying, do it, we got your back. Now the people blocking the Trump supporters are the cops, and the cops saying, get out of my way. I'm here for Trump, not for you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, could it, I wonder how likely the possibility is that you get the cops fighting two different groups on two different fronts.
That's interesting.
It'll be really different, but I wouldn't be surprised because we've already seen right-wing groups fighting with cops. Not nearly as bad as how the left does it.
But that was unheard of, though. Right. That's why it's important to notate that, because that's like not a thing. Even back when the Tea Party thing was going down, like it wasn't. You may had a skirmish here and there, but for the most part, that was not what happened.
Could you imagine if there's like a guy with a Trump flag and he's yelling at a cop, and there's an Antifa guy 10 feet away, and
be a nice photo. Whoever gets that photo is going to be a millionaire.
But they're both yelling at cops. And the Antifa guy looks over and sees a Trump supporter yelling at the cop, and then he's like, "I'm not going to get involved in that." And he keeps yelling. I'm going to ignore that. He's not going to. Normally, the Antifa guys want to go fight the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys want to go fight Antifa. But what happens when they're both protesting the government? It's going to be interesting because I think one of the problems is tribalism, and both sides are trying to use any ally to get control of the White House. The problem is, for the left, you see Donald Trump. The establishment Republicans don't like him, but they'll wait. They'll stand there and say, okay, fine. Well, Trump's in charge. We'll bide our time. Trump supporters just want Trump. So that creates a good bit of unity between Republicans willing to just say okay to Trump and Trump supporters who are fighting for Trump. On the left, the Antifa people are like, yeah, we'll fight with you to get rid of Trump, but we're not supporting Biden. Yeah. There's no unity on the left over who their candidate is. So they're in a weakened position. Yeah. So if the fight is against Joe Biden and Trump's gone, then Antifa's not going to be fighting with the right. They're going to be fighting the cops. Yeah. And then the Trump supporters aren't going to be fighting with Antifa because they're both fighting the establishment.
And that's the interesting thing. Like, I don't know if that's going to be a thing that's going to happen, because I feel like I saw too many times where they kind of, during the Obama presidency, I don't know if they've gotten amped up enough to maybe go back on that, but during the Obama presidency, there were a lot of instances in which they could have went that route, and they decided not to. In fact, when it came to the rioting, that was one of the things that Obama certainly was. He had no issue coming out and being like, okay, y'all need to stop. When the Ferguson thing and all of that stuff went down, he had no issue being like, okay, y'all are being stupid.
People need to remember, Occupy Wall Street started under Obama. Exactly. Major riots across the United States started under Obama. Today, I sent out a meme with a young girl with a Biden hat saying, "Thank you for saving us." And then Biden is there looking at her in disgust saying, "I'm literally going to do everything Trump did."
That's all you should have, yeah.
And we have to understand, Biden is the epitome of the establishment. When you look at his cabinet, when you look at his administration, he has Goldman Sachs, he has large tech executives, he has executives from all the worst possible elements of the corporatist world possible. People are going to get a very rude awakening to who he really is, the policies he sets forward, and when he gets into office, he's not going to serve you. He's going to serve the special interests that put him in there. And when he does that, especially with all the civil unrest we've been seeing, it's been brewing, it's been building up. I think it would be naive to think that there's going to be peace civilly in the United States coming forward from here.
Oh yeah,
this is why the Democrats rely on low information voters. Yeah, it's why they want the voting age to be 16, because these people who are in their 20s who voted for Biden aren't old enough to remember Joe Biden killing kids in foreign countries and Obama's extrajudicial assassinations.
Dumb people are also, let's just be honest here, more violent. So when you have a whole bunch of violent people getting angry, you're brewing a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, no, they were there useful idiots. I mean, we saw that with Black Lives Matter not getting a seat at the table at their little civil rights. It's more of the the establishment civil rights guys that were linking up with Biden and Black Lives Matter didn't get a seat at the table, and they were all frustrated, like, we demand a seat. And I was like, dude, they've been using y'all for useful idiots for the last, I don't know how long. It's not like they care. Did y'all not understand much of what y'all didn't get much, y'all didn't get anything out of Biden out of an Obama presidency. What makes you think that you will be prioritized? They may campaign on that, but what makes you think they're going to prioritize you once they get in?
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.